Wait, so get this right. We're going deep on a story today, and it sounds like something out of like a political thriller, you know?
Ooh, yeah.
Just imagine that, okay,
The Amish.
the Amish,
Wow.
a community that's known for like being super traditional and like avoiding modern technology. Like they avoid it, right?
Yay.
They might have like swung a whole US election.
Oh, way.
Yeah. So we've got these sources and like this Italian video
Okay.
makes some pretty wild claims.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to like unpack all of it.
Sounds good.
So what's interesting here is like it really flips the script on how we usually think about like power in politics, right? Like we tend to think about, like huge groups of voters or campaigns with tons of money. Like those are the things that like really make a difference in elections.
Yeah, makes sense.
But this case like makes you wonder, could small groups like the Amish actually have way more influence than we think?
That's a really good point.
It's something to keep in mind as we go through all this stuff, right?
Right.
So this video we're looking at, it focuses on claims that the Amish in Pennsylvania specifically,
Okay.
they weren't happy with some of the Biden administration's policies.
Interesting.
They felt like there was too much government overreach, especially when it came to like their traditional farming practices.
You know what's interesting about that is this video highlights this one example that really seems to have hit a nerve with the Amish.
Okay, what is it?
This crackdown on using raw milk.
Hmm.
And the Amish, with their big emphasis on like being self-sufficient and doing things the traditional way,
Right.
they saw this as like the government like stepping on their way of life,
It makes you wonder how many other small communities are dealing with stuff like this too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But hold on, because it gets even crazier. Okay, so apparently Elon Musk
What?
and the Trump campaign,
Mm-hmm.
they both noticed that the Amish were unhappy, and they decided to reach out to them.
Wow.
There's even an audio clip of Musk talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it. Okay, so Musk is like pretty open about seeing an opportunity here, right?
He is.
But is it just about politics? Or is there something more to it?
I don't know.
I mean, he's a tech giant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's always pushing the limits of technology.
Right.
Could there be a part of him that actually gets where the Amish are coming from?
Like, what do you mean?
Like
Yeah.
their desire for less government interference,
Yeah.
maybe even like a distrust of technology taking over traditional ways of life.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a very interesting question. It definitely adds a whole other layer to this story.
Okay.
On the surface, it looks like a simple deal, right?
Yeah,
Votes in exchange for taking care of their problems.
Right.
You might be right. There could be a deeper connection there, like a shared belief in individual freedom and less government involvement that goes beyond their totally different backgrounds.
it's fascinating, right? And this leads us to the video's biggest claim,
Which is?
that the Amish vote was strong enough to flip Pennsylvania red in a recent election. Now, for those who don't follow U.S. politics closely, flipping Pennsylvania is a huge GE deal.
How come?
It's a state that could go either way in an election, right?
Right.
It's like scoring the winning point at the very last second of a close game.
Got it.
The video even says that something like 250,000 to 300,000 votes changed because of the Amish getting involved.
Those are some serious numbers.
They are. And that's exactly why we got to be a little skeptical.
Good point.
Even though the video says it's a fact, just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Exactly.
We need to look at other things that might have affected the election results and find some real proof to back up this claim about a massive Amish voter shift.
I agree completely.
It's important to dig deeper and not just believe everything you hear, right?
Totally.
But even if we forget about the specific numbers for a second,
Okay.
think about what this means in the bigger picture.
Okay.
If even a relatively small but very united group like the Amish can potentially swing an election,
Yeah.
it changes everything. It means campaigns might need to stop focusing only on big groups of voters
Okay.
and start paying more attention to these smaller but potentially decisive voting blocks.
That's a really interesting thought.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it challenges our whole idea of how political power works and who really has it,
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's fascinating.
it is.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if this whole Amish thing is like just the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
Like, are there other groups out there that we're not even thinking about
Right.
who could have this kind of influence if they got organized politically?
That's a good question.
It's something to think about.
It is. And it makes you realize we might be missing a lot by just focusing on the big demographic groups, right?
Totally.
But this deep dive isn't just about the political side of the Amish story. This video we're looking at, it also talks about something I think resonates with a lot of people.
What's that?
This like longing for a simpler life, a more community-focused way of living. You know, it talks about how when this Amish political thing came out, there was this wave of support from other Americans.
Really?
People were praising their values, their traditional values.
Interesting.
Even buying their products, like to show they were on their side.
I wonder if that's just a temporary thing or if it shows a bigger change happening.
That's a good question.
Are more and more people getting tired of this fast-paced, tech-driven world we live in? Are they looking for that sense of community and belonging that's hard to find these days?
It's easy to romanticize the Amish lifestyle, though, right?
Right.
But I wonder if we're sometimes putting our own desires onto them.
What do you mean?
Like, it's easy to focus on the nice parts, the close families, the connection to nature.
Sure.
But are we ignoring the challenges they face?
You bring up a good point. It's important to remember that the Amish aren't just one big group, you know?
Right.
They have their own debates, their own complexities, their own struggles.
Of course.
Making their way of life seem perfect can make us miss the reality of it.
And we also got to remember that if they did decide to get political, assuming the video's right, they probably did it to protect their own way of life.
Makes sense.
It wasn't necessarily about making a big statement about modern society or telling everyone how to live.
I see your point. It's a reminder that even groups that seem outside the mainstream, they have their own reasons, their own goals, their own agency.
They're not just pawns in the game.
Exactly. So we've talked about the possible political and cultural effects of this whole Amish thing. But I'm curious what you think the long-term consequences might be.
Okay.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the Amish do become more politically active. How could that change the political landscape, especially in places where there are a lot of them?
That's a good question. What do you think?
Well, if they become a reliable voting bloc, their values and priorities could start shaping policies.
Interesting.
Locally, even nationally. Imagine their focus on traditional farming affecting agricultural rules. Or their emphasis on religious freedom, influencing debates about education or social programs.
That's fascinating.
It could bring a whole new set of factors into politics.
It could lead to some weird alliances and conflicts too, right?
Exactly.
Like on some issues, they might agree with conservative groups who also want limited government and traditional values. But on others, like environmental protection or social justice, they might clash.
It's complicated, for sure.
It is. And as they become more visible, they might face new challenges too.
Like what?
Their traditions, which have been okay because they were kind of isolated, might get more scrutiny, more pressure to fit in with the mainstream.
That's a tough spot.
It is. It's like walking a tightrope. Trying to keep their way of life while also dealing with a complex and interconnected world.
It definitely raises a question for our listeners, you know.
What is it?
Do you think this increased interaction with the outside world, this potential move into politics, will it make the Amish community stronger? Or will it weaken the very traditions they're fighting to protect?
It's a question with no easy answers. That's like the core of what we're talking about here, right?
It is.
This community that's like chosen to be separate, you know? And now they're getting pulled into the very systems they tried to avoid.
It's kind of ironic.
Makes you wonder if there's a way to balance it out, you know? Engage with the world, but not lose what makes them special.
It's a tough one. It's something a lot of groups deal with.
How to hold on to your identity when things are changing all around you.
Exactly, and there's no one answer that fits everyone.
It's like a constant back and forth, right?
It is. You're always adjusting and figuring things out.
And speaking of adjusting, one thing that really stands out in this story.
What's that?
Is how much support the Amish got from other Americans.
That was surprising.
And it wasn't just agreeing with their politics. It was deeper than that, you know?
Like what?
Like recognizing shared values, maybe even a little envy for that sense of community they've built.
That's what makes this so interesting. I think it touches on something we all want. Connection, belonging, a sense of purpose that goes beyond just ourselves.
Makes sense in a world that feels so disconnected, right?
Totally. And the Amish way of life with their focus on community, faith, tradition. It can seem like a kind of hope, you know?
It's funny because I'm not Amish.
Me neither.
And honestly, the thought of giving up my phone and internet freaks me out.
I get that.
But there's a part of me that gets that longing, you know,